Welcome back to the Roadside Rescue YouTube channel. I'm Ernest, and we're here at the end of the day today. It's been a particularly long day. Can't even say that word right. And we've got an emergency call out. So this gentleman has a vehicle that won't start. Sometimes it starts. It's not starting right now. It doesn't start most of the time. The common denominator being he only ever tries to start the car when it's cold in the morning. So I'm thinking it may be a battery issue. Well, I'm sure he tries to start at other times. That's probably the occasional when it does start. It's probably a battery problem is what I'm thinking. So we're going to head across town and take a look at that. We've got test equipment. And here we go. All right, and before we head over there, we're going to do a tool giveaway in this video. We're looking at a super capacitor jump pack for your car. It'll take it's a super capacitor. You don't have to charge it. It will take power from the battery that's already dead. It'll slowly charge up, and then it'll collect that power, concentrate it, and give you one big burst of power so you can start off your car. It's a nice jump pack to have in case of an emergency when you don't have to worry about keeping charged up. We'll take a look at it when we get over there. We're going to use it to start the car in this video today. Here we go. Right, here's a look at the Autowit Super Capacitor 2 jump box. This is what we'll be using to start the car when we get over there. Super nice tool. If you want to win this tool, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. So I'll give this tool away to anybody who shares one of the Roadside Rescue videos on a social media platform. It can be any platform. And leave a comment down below letting me know that you did that. I'll verify with the winner that they shared the video. So make sure you do that. And yeah, leave a comment down below so that I know who to pick. That'll be who I pick. And then I'll make sure that you shared a video on a social media platform. It could be any video. This is the tool we're giving away. Super nice tool. I've been saving this one up. I'm excited to do the review and giveaway on this, and let's head over there and get this car started. Oh, all right, we just got here, and this is ridiculous. We got what they called brown snow the other day, and apparently I had a ton of dust from these windstorms up north, and it just dropped dust all over everything. I mean, it's all over my windshields. The snowstorm last week just dropped this dust on everything, so pretty gross, but I'm not gonna have to touch the outside of the car. Thought that might just be interesting to some of y'all. We'll pop the hood and do some tests here. All right, so here we are. It is just clicking. So it sounds like it's a battery problem. What I'm going to do is a system test on the charging system. We have to get it running to do that. But before I get it running and possibly lose the chance of it not starting again, what I'm going to do is a test on this battery, and I'm going to do that. It looks like there's quite a bit of oxidation around the lead terminals here. They're pretty dark. What I'm going to do is take my battery tester, and I'm going to clamp it past these terminals. I'm going to make sure they don't touch the terminals of this battery. I'm going to clamp one here and one here, and we're going to test and see if that battery passes a battery test, you know, back here where it's not touching the terminals. If it fails, I'm going to take it off, and then I'm going to test the battery on just the terminals. That way we know if we've got a bad connection through these terminals here. If that makes sense, I'll show you what it looks like here in just a second. Okay, here we go. We'll clamp on back here. And you can see how those connectors are not touching the terminals. That will tell us if the connection between the terminals and the post, sorry, they're not touching the post. That'll tell us if the connection between the post and the terminals is bad. I'm guessing it is, since this battery's for only about a year old. See how many cold cranking amps we have here? 590. Okay, so it says the battery's good, but it's not charged up. So that could be an alternator problem. Let's get this cleaned up regardless, and then we'll test that alternator. All right, here we are in the back of the UPS truck here, the Roadside Rescue Mobile. And I assumed, looking at that, I assumed it was a 10mm, but maybe wrong. You know what, I'm gonna replace both these terminals are just pretty junked up. That is a 10mm, but it's just not the sort of connection you'd hope for. And here's a tip of the day. When you get a new battery terminal, I've seen so many times where somebody's put the bolt in the wrong way. These terminals, these lead terminals, have a stop. On one side, you can see that stop right there, and they don't have it on this side. So this bolt is squared, and this square end needs to go up against that stop so that when you're turning it, it doesn't spin all the way around like they will on this side. All right, now there's no like oxidation buildup, that blue stuff you see around the batteries here. I'm not going to spray it off with any sort of acid eater. What I am going to do is use this battery cleaning tool, which has like a blade in it, and it'll just scrape a nice clean layer off of that terminal, off that post there. So that's a nice clean layer. We'll take our new terminal, and all we've got to do is ream it. We've got this reamer right here, so we just put it in there, twist. It does the same thing, but on the inside of this terminal, it's going to scrape off a nice, clean, fresh layer that doesn't have any rust in there. This doesn't have felt pads, so I'm going to put some felt pads on it for this gentleman. And we're also going to use silicone paste as a dielectric grease around that terminal and post. Now this is a super important step to not miss if you're doing this by yourself. You want to have those felts there to absorb any sort of acid that may be coming up from those batteries. You don't want to tap on the post. That can cause cracks around there that causes that acid to come up. You also want to make sure you put the right color on the right side. If you put the black on the positive, for instance, I've seen multiple times where somebody's crossed their jumper cable wires and almost caught their vehicle on fire, and I think almost every time it was because they had the felt on the wrong post. So make sure you pay attention to that. There we go, we got our silicone on there. And what I am going to do though is use some cleaner to clean up this ground cable here, and then we'll put that in our new terminal. Now I like to put my terminal on while I'm tightening down the strap here. Helps keep that terminal from spinning and hurting your fingers if you're just trying to hold on to it. So this kind of gives it something to spin against. Then we'll take this one back off as we're going to reconnect the negative last. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is over tightening terminals. It just has to be tight enough to where if you pull on it, it doesn't wiggle if you're talking about the terminal itself, or if you give it a nice little tug, it doesn't come out. There's no need to bend that into a concave shape, by over tightening those bolts, and that'll keep you from having grip if you ever need to retighten that, and that'll keep you from having appropriate grip if you ever need to retighten that in the future. All right, now we'll move on to the positive terminal, and I do have some of these mostly zinc terminals here. In fact, I have the exact same kind. What I'm going to do is use a lead one though, and instead of using the strap, like you know how you would strap down a whole cable, we're just going to run those two straps with their washer. We've got a washer here for them, and we're just going to run it through one of these. The lead just seems to work a little bit better in my experience. So not that I'm against using those zinc ones in this instance. I'm just going to use that lead one though to make sure that this charging system for such a small alternator and battery gets the most out of it. The link for this tool and all the tools I use is in the description. This is by far the most commonly asked about tool that I use, and I have it in the description labeled under battery T tool or T post cleaner, something like that. It starts with a T. We'll take it and ream it out, make sure we got a nice clean surface. We'll put our felt on. Again, there's no need to tap on your terminals. If they don't fit, use a spreader. If you tap them, you can cause cracks. That when you see all that blue buildup around your battery terminals, that's one of the leading causes of that, is just getting cracks in there. But this is a super common job. This is a super common call out, especially in the winter, is people calling us because their vehicles won't start, and it's very common for that to be caused by having bad connections on their batteries, and not because their battery itself is bad. Okay, so we use this washer here that it came with. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and scratch up these surfaces and make sure they're clean, but what we're going to do is just run this bolt straight into there. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. These terminals usually don't come sized for the positive. One might just be tempted to smack that down on there. We're just going to go take a pair of pliers and spread that, and they make a pair of pliers for spreading battery terminals. I don't have one, so we'll just use a normal pair of pliers to put it in there and just stretch that out. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. We'll just put that in there. Open the handle, turn, open the handle. You can do it just straight on its side. I like to spin it a little bit just to make sure it opens evenly. Usually it doesn't open too evenly anyways. You can see how one side cocked out more than the other. But that will now slide on there nice and easy without having to tap on that. Okay, now you don't have to over tighten it, just tight enough to where when you pull on it, it doesn't turn. I've seen people with these, especially these lead terminals, you can over tighten this. I mean, with a brand new one on a positive terminal, I could go ahead and squeeze this so hard, and the lead is so malleable that it would go ahead and just bend all the way till closing. But that doesn't leave you any forgiveness in the future, where if you have to come back, you know, and replace your battery in a year or two and tighten it back down, this will give you plenty of opportunities to to retighten a new one on there without coming all the way down and closing that gap up. Once you do that, you've stretched your terminal out, you're gonna have to replace it. I know that doesn't look beautiful, but that's gonna have a much better connection. Okay, same thing there. Again, you don't want to over tighten it. That'll give yourself some room to breathe in the future. And we're going to go ahead and get this started up. We'll put that super capacitor on there, and then we'll test the alternator once we get this running. All right, so here's how this jump starter works. This is a super capacitor. Puts out 15.5 volts at 800 amps. It's got a nice temperature working range. Here's what happens. If your battery's dead, if you've got 5 volts, it takes 30 minutes or less to charge this up. If your battery's got 12 volts, it'll take 3 minutes. If it's got 6 volts, it'll take 20 minutes. And so rather than wait on this battery to take 30 minutes to charge this up, I'm gonna plug this into the batteries in my truck so we can have this done in 3 minutes. But if I was on the side of the road, all I'd have to do is plug this up to your battery. You know, you hook it up, then I jump back in my car and wait around for 20-30 minutes until it charges up, and then it'll give you all that power back at once with enough voltage here to jumpstart your vehicle. So that's what we're going to do. However, I'm just going to charge it up on that truck, so I'm not here for half an hour waiting on it. All right, now this isn't really a product review. They just sent this to me and, hoped that I could give one away to the supporters of my channel. So that's what I'm planning on doing. Again, share this video on any social media outlet. Leave a comment down below when you've done that, and you'll win this. You'll have the chance to win this super capacitor jump starter. Plug this in through the USB outlet so you can wait inside the car when you're doing that, or you can hook it straight up to the battery, I believe. All right, so here's a close-up of the screen when it's charging. It'll show you your voltage and your battery percentage. If you can see that, trying to get a close-up on it here. Once it's charged up, we'll put it on the black car and get going. All right, here we go. We're fully charged, and it'll let you know when it's done charging and ready to go. And if you like this tool and you don't win it in the giveaway, check out the link in the description and you can get yourself one. Great, I thought I didn't record any of that. Luckily I did. I left the camera on by accident, but we hooked the jump starter up to it and it didn't start, and so I'm like, man, that's weird. So I gave it some brake cleaner in the intake. It's a good test for the fuel pump. I could hear the fuel pump come on though, but I sprayed some brake cleaner in there because what that'll do is if the engine's not getting fuel, it's like starter fluid. It'll put it in the intake, and so it'll try and start. If it tries to start when you put starter fluid or brake cleaner in there, carb cleaner, whatever, it's not going to run on it. It's just going to try and start. Then you'll know it's not getting fuel because, hey, that time it tried to start, but normally it doesn't. Well, it still wouldn't start, so I thought, man, shoot, maybe we're not getting spark. Maybe we got a sensor. So I plugged in the computer, no codes. Shoot, man. Well, what's going on then? So I put in my spark tester here on cylinder number 1. It looks like we were getting spark. It didn't look like it was consistent, but normally I would be able to hold it by hand and watch. I was watching while I was trying to crank it through the gap in the hood here. And but it was getting some sparks, so I thought, well, at least it should be trying. And so I went ahead and pulled the spark plug, and lo and behold, look at this. There's no gap in this spark plug, absolutely no gap. I don't know if all of them are like this, but this will 100% cause a no start. So this is super weird. I don't know why. The guy said he just changed his spark plugs. So that's why I wasn't even going to deal with him in the first place. I thought it was definitely a charging system issue. But this is definitely going to cause a no start. Maybe he's had this vehicle sitting around forever. That's why the battery needed recharged. It's definitely not completely dead though. So we're going to re-gap these spark plugs as best as I can. I'm at least just going to put an appropriate gap on them to get the car running, you know, started. And then, you know, he's got to get new spark plugs regardless. So this is a new spark plug for sure, but I'm just going to gap these as best I can. I've got a couple feeler gauges, and we'll get this vehicle at least running. But I don't know how this thing starts occasionally. I don't know what the deal is with that. But I've mentioned it before in some of my videos. That can happen if you buy cheap spark plugs that don't have protectors on them in the packaging, or if you drop your spark plug when you take it out of the packaging. You always want to be real careful when you take your spark plugs out of the box, and that's why. I'm not sure how this happened though, and I do know he said one of them wouldn't really come out, so I hope he did not cross thread one of his spark plugs, so we'll find out. Number one's done. We'll go look at all of them. Yeah, it really caught me off guard though when I went to start this and it wouldn't start. I thought, shoot, man, there goes that video. Well, I knew I could get it running or get it figured out. I was going to do a compression test after this, but when I pulled that spark plug and did the visual inspection, there was your problem. Oh, this may be that one that didn't want to come out. Oh, shoot. That's probably cross-threaded. I'm not going to fool with that right now. It's got an aluminum head. That can strip those threads right out of there. So we'll assume that's the one that he said he couldn't get out. And we'll assume that it at least has appropriate gap on that spark plug, because it hasn't been changed by him. Not that he himself is a bad mechanic. I don't know. We're here to fix it though. Not make more problems, so I'm not gonna fool around with that too much. Well, this has turned into an interesting video. Let's see here what this one looks like. I'm excited to see it. Not quite out yet. All right, here we go. Come on. What in the world? Oh no. Oh no, I know what might be wrong. In fact, I know exactly what might be wrong. These are not the right spark plugs. Shoot. I think these are interfering with the pistons. There's no way he dropped all of these. And for this size engine, for the spark plug to be that long, this is like, you know, V8 stuff. You know, I could be wrong. I've seen Nissan Jukes, for example, and some Volkswagens that have really long spark plugs, but I doubt this has spark plugs this long. These are probably not the right spark plugs. I've seen most commonly this problem run into when people buy their parts online. When you buy them in the parts store, their computers seem to have a good system of not giving you the wrong part, probably because they're liable, but online, it's your job to verify you're getting the right part. And so these are probably too long for this engine. Let me crank this over and see, without starting it, let me just crank it over and see if it bends that spark plug back. It may try and run because I adjusted the gap, but it should, if it's interfering, it should bend back on the first touch, and that is not good. Okay, here's a surefire test to see if these spark plugs are interfering, but I can almost guarantee you they are at this point. Find my 10mm socket. Wow, this is interesting. This is interesting. This is the first time I've ever ran into this problem personally. And now I've got to be real clear with him to make sure he wasn't able to get that out, and not that he put it in and it got real tough. Sometimes people will say that. They'll say, hey, it was really hard, I couldn't get it out. What they really are trying to say is, and I use the term trying lightly, what they're really trying to say is, hey, this thing went in super hard and I don't know if it's going to come back out. So hopefully that's not the issue there. Moment of truth, let's find out. It's starting to get dark on us. Here we go. To make the video real interesting, here's the conclusion. And if it needs new spark plugs, I'm not going to do that tonight. We'll end off the video here. My guess is, if I had to place a bet, spark plugs are too long. Ooh, don't know. Could be wrong. Because that one still has its gap, so I don't know. We'll put them back and we'll gap this other one then. You know what? Let me pull up the appropriate spark plug online here, and I will look at approximate length. You know, I'm not going to count the threads or anything, but if it, you know, some spark plugs are that long, usually in small engines like this. So if it looks like that's how it's supposed to be, then I'm going to say he needs new spark plugs. But maybe he just smashed the gap on all of them. Maybe he thought that looked wrong. So I'll be right back and I'll tell you the consensus. Well, it looks like these might be right. I'm going to see if I can get it running. The only other thing initially that led me to believe maybe these are the right spark plugs in the first place, when I got the idea, was the fact that I couldn't actually see any marks on the top of here. And you know what I'm going to do? Now that I say that, talking about marks, I'm going to grab my inspection camera and stick it down here and see if there's any marks on that piston. All right, this is the day for battery corrosion. I had to change the batteries in here, and one of these batteries was real corroded. Look at that Duralast representing AutoZone. You want to sponsor me? You know what you got to do. Okay, here we go. We'll take a look down here, see if you can see what I see. We'll look at the thread length. We'll look at the thread length in here as well while we go down. And what we're looking for is marks on the top of the piston where it may have obviously collided with that spark plug. Is that a mark? All right, I'm not seeing any obvious marks on there, so interesting to say the least. But hey, we've got this spark plug gapped. Let's put it in there. This has turned into a long little diagnosis, but a good one. These are the ones I can come back with confidence and say, you know, I tested every single aspect of the problem. Except for I didn't check fuel pressure, but if it doesn't start after this, I guess we'll do that. I did hear it. I did a audio check on that fuel pump. It was humming and it sounded right. Okay, that's 2 down. 1 we're not going to touch for 3. And here we go for 4. And we're losing light fast. I got to finish up in about 10 minutes. This one's tough too. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'll be amazed if that gap looks the same on this. It's got to be user error. Feels like one of those tests, you know, you watch those shows like, will this mechanic really scam you? And they like pull a fuse out. First off, I'm like, man, I don't know if I'd ever notice a missing fuse, you know what I mean? Like my car won't start, they're trying to catch a scam. They pull a fuse out, like, shoot, man. Yeah, no gap on this one either. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'd catch a completely missing fuse, a busted one, yeah, but it feels like one of those things, like, what's he gonna charge us for, you know, putting no gap in our spark plugs? Well, I don't know, man. Why is it like that? I don't know if I've determined that yet, but I'm gonna get this running and then I'm gonna let it run for a minute and then I'll pull one and I'll see if it has lost its gap. If it does, man, we know these spark plugs are wrong, but they should be replaced anyways at this point. I just want to see if I can get it running. That was about the gap on those. Or maybe he said it was running rough, I think, before we replaced the spark plugs. This is all speculation, but it just, I don't know, I can't stop talking. Maybe he pulled the spark plugs out when it was running rough. He saw that they had no gap and thought, is that what they're supposed to look like? Because these ones don't. Maybe then he took the gap out of them because that's how the old ones were. I don't know. This guy, though, I know him, has a tendency of buying cheap cars and trying to resell them, which there's not much market in that. I'll make a video on it one day. Maybe that's what he did with this one. So maybe he got himself a good deal for a bad running car just because he needed a new pair of spark plugs. better of a deal if he would have done it himself. But some things you need a professional to find. Okay, well that's interesting that it didn't start. Looked like a surefire solution to the problem, but I guess they could have been arguing. He drove it a couple of times, so I'm very confused as to how it started. It's not fuel, so it's spark or compression. I'm guessing it's these spark plugs aren't correct. I couldn't tell in the picture. I'll have to go to the parts store and verify. My guess is they're not correct, so I'll let you know at the end of the video in a subtitle if that is in fact what's wrong. And I'm done for today. It's dark. It's getting dark. The GoPro always picks up more light than you can actually see, but I'm not going to work in the dark tonight, so we'll be done here. I'll verify spark plugs tomorrow and probably get it running. So, all right, here we are, a little behind the scenes action on this episode. This one's driving me crazy, so I'm headed down to the auto parts store right now, through the park, down the greenway. I'm gonna go get the spark plugs for this car because, yeah, it's driving me crazy. So we'll figure out if these spark plugs are right or not. We'll be at AutoZone in just a minute. It's way faster to ride my bike a couple blocks down the river trail than it is to get in my car and go through town through like 5 different stoplights. So we'll be there ASAP. All right, well, here we are. I'm just leaving AutoZone, and it's got to be user error, man. These are the same spark plugs. They're the exact same. So I don't know if this was a test. Surely not, because I've worked on this guy's cars several times, but bizarre. So I've got new spark plugs. They need new spark plugs. I mean, I unbent those, but you know, now that strap isn't centered on the point there, so new spark plugs it is. Hopefully that gets it running. I mean, if it's not that, I don't know. We'll test spark on all the different wires and stuff, but we'll see tomorrow when we put those spark plugs in. I'm not going to do it tonight. All right, here we are back over here this morning. We've got the spark plugs that are in there. I mentioned it last night when I went to the parts store. Those are the correct ones, so they're just really long, but I'm just baffled by why those are smashed flat with no gap. So we're gonna go ahead, just pop these out. We're gonna put new spark plugs in. I got more information from the gentleman, and apparently it was running fine before he replaced the spark plugs. But he had taken it in for an oil change, and they recommended he replace the spark plugs, so he did it himself. So I don't know if he got spark plugs that were cheap, had been dropped in their packaging or something, or if he removed that gap himself. No idea. It's very bizarre, but we'll get these replaced for him here in just a jiffy. Okay. And fingers crossed it runs after that. Apparently it ran fine before that. And I was telling him, I don't know how he drove it, because he drove it after he replaced the spark plugs. I was telling him I have no idea how he was able to drive it after he put those spark plugs in. I don't know. So this is what I'm talking about. When you get spark plugs, these are double platinums or just platinums. They should have like some sort of protector, plastic or cardboard. Cardboard's more environmentally friendly, obviously, so I can always support that. But they should have a protector in there, so if you drop them in their packaging, it dents the top of that cardboard and not your gap here. And these are pre-gapped, so we don't need to adjust the gap on these. Make sure we start them by hand so we don't cross-thread them. This isn't an impact driver, so don't worry about me putting these down with that. And I'll finish them off by hand regardless. So we get it down and crush that crush washer. You can use a torque wrench if you're not comfortable with that. And there's one. 2 more because this one is stuck. He couldn't get it out. I put more pressure than I was comfortable with on it yesterday to see if it would come out, and it didn't, so I don't want to fool around with that. There's a trick to getting seized spark plugs out of there. Penetrating fluid, get it really hot and put an impact gun on it. That's the best chances of doing it without stripping the threads, but like you might need that on like a 5.4 Triton, Ford Triton, that have spark plug problems, but it was running fine before. I'm not gonna worry about the one in that head unless it develops a misfire or something. Then we'll worry about maybe ripping the threads out, putting a Gila coil in it or something. But all right, fingers double crossed. Maybe that's bad luck. But fingers crossed that this works. I don't want to fool around with this much more. Okay, first attempt, listen for that fuel pump. Hear it. All right, there you go. That's it, that's all that was. That's so bizarre, man. That is like the most, that's probably the most baffling thing I've seen in quite a while working on cars. But you know, it is what it is. So thanks for watching. This is Roadside Rescue YouTube channel. This is a job well done. I'm Ernest. We'll see you on the next episode.